Hi, I'm David. I'm going to be talking today about advocating in open source. Before I get started, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank IAG and everyone else who's put this conference on. I'm so grateful to be here, and I've learned so much already. So a little bit about me. I am more than just that weirdo wearing the cinnamon headgear, which I'm going to take off now before my head gets sweaty. I know, I'm so sorry. It's a little distracting when I'm turning my head. Actually, I was just told to speak louder, which is a shock to me, so I'm going to try and speak as loud as I can. I'm a senior developer advocate working on open source, open search. So here to hear from someone with years of experience in open source, you're in the right top. And if you're here to hear from someone who has years of developer advocacy experience, you're also in the realm of talk. I actually only just started developer advocacy about a year ago. But what I can share is all the different things that I've managed to learn about advocating for open source software, because it's inherently very different than product software, right? In open source, it's free, and that's inherently confusing to a lot of different companies. So, with that, I previously worked as a data engineer, DevOps engineer, network automation engineer, so I did a lot of different engineering. And in all those positions, I was constantly confused by the fact that no one wanted to actually deploy open source software. I was like, why? It's free. All we have to do is run it. And I ran into this, not at one job, two jobs, at several different jobs. And I'll even point out a specific instance. I was working at a finance company. We were using Kubernetes, and Kubernetes went down, and it went down hard. And everyone was asking, my CTO calls me up and says, so who do we call to fix it? I'm like, you call me? I'm here to fix it. They said, no, but who do we call to support? I said, I'm here to support, so I will be fixing it. So open source software can be inherently confusing for companies to adopt. So this is some of the different things that I've experienced from working with open source software, and it's what helped me actually get into the world of open source software. So who has actually contributed to open source software? Okay. You? I saw your hand first. You come and find me afterwards. I have swag for you. Thank you, by the way. Also, so how many of you use open source software in your work on a regular basis? Okay, that's a lot more of you. That's about the split I would expect, honestly. So let's go ahead and start talking about what makes open source software so different. Why? Why are people so confused by using open source software? We're going to start with the production of open source software because it's very different. The economics of a SaaS product or a regular product are simple. I pay you, you support the product. It's easy. For open source software, people ask, why is anyone going to produce this and then give it away for free? That's kind of weird. Don't they have to make money? If they're not making money, is it going to be supported? These are some of the questions that you hear a lot of times about the production of open source software. Also, you ask, what does open source software mean to this particular project? So take Clojure, for example. Clojure was developed by a man named Rich Hickey, and he is very particular about what he lets into his open source project. Rich carefully reviews every single pull request and does not allow a majority through because he's very particular. He wants Clojure to be exactly how he wants Clojure. He's what we would call a benevolent dictator for life, a BBFL in the open source community. They have different open source software, so I'll use GitHub as a great example. GitHub has a rich API, and they provide a lot of client libraries in order to access their API. So it makes sense for GitHub to run and operate that open source project. OpenSearch, the company that I work with, I work for AWS, but I work exclusively on open source OpenSearch. So if you have managed service questions, I'm sorry, I cannot help you, which is very nice. But OpenSearch is in an interesting space where it's managed by several different companies. maintainers live in all of these companies, and it's a whole community. So this is the type of production I'll be talking about mostly, but open source software is produced in a lot of ways, and a lot of the strategies that I'm going to mention relate to all of those. Another key point is trust. Why should we trust this open source software? We'll take, for example, Log4j. I'm sure everyone is very familiar with that. Log4j vulnerability shook the open source world. It made everyone inherently skeptical of open source projects. The truth is, open source projects, the code is out there. Security researchers are readily and happily practicing their tactics by testing open source projects. So open source software is actually very secure. But there's this stigma now because of this vulnerability with Log4j that open source software isn't necessarily secure. So that's a major hurdle when you're advocating for an open source software. Then the third point is governance. So governance has to do with who has the final say, maybe, in a project. So say, for example, in the example of GitHub's API and their client libraries. GitHub should have the final say. And we expect GitHub to do the right thing for the community. But truthfully, GitHub maintains their API, so it makes sense for them to also be the maintainers on their project. But for OpenSearch, it's a little confusing. You have all of these different companies, so how do you navigate them? So that is a little bit about governance. Also, I think this has been mentioned in almost every other talk. The ones that come to mind are Carla's and Diana's. You have things like the code of conduct, which is exceptionally important for understanding how you should act in your open source project. How do you treat violations of the conduct? And that's a really key part of building an open source project is level setting those expectations. So let's get a bit into how do you put this into action? How do you overcome those obstacles? And the number one strategy is supporting the community. I think everyone's like, oh yeah, support the community. Like that seems like a very easy thing to do. But we'll talk a little bit about how that looks for each of these different levels of the community. So at the core, you have your maintainers. These maintainers are the people reviewing all of your issues. They are the most active individuals. And more often than not, they're the most overwhelmed individuals. They need tools to be able to triage more issues than they have people to triage. So you need to support your maintainers so that they have the code of conduct so that they can apply those guidelines. So they have the tools to triage those issues. So they can understand what the priorities of the project are and what should they be merging into your project. Then we have contributors. Contributors are your unseen force, right? They are building your product actively. So it's important that contributors know, one, how your product works, two, how to contribute, and three, how to contribute quickly. In my opinion, quickly is important. And I'll explain the reason why. We found that for OpenSearch, 80% of our contributors contribute fewer than 2 times. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's not bad to have people contributing easily. In fact, actually, it's good. You should be able to come in, fix a bug that you want to fix, and then leave if you need to. It's very hard to stay engaged in every single open source community. I don't think all of us are staying up to date on curl every single day. But if curl was to ever break, I'd sure hope that we could go and contribute easily to it. So our contributors are a huge population to support. We also have our users. Our users need good documentation. And why not open source the documentation? Make it easy for users to say, oh, that didn't work for me. I'll open an issue, and then after they open the issue, you encourage them, hey, you can fix discuss that documentation yourself. So users need support getting going with their documentation. Examples as well. June actually mentioned this as well, and I thought this was wonderful from his talk. Internationalization is so incredibly important. I'll take OpenSearch for example right now, who is having a really rough time with this. We found that 30% of our users that are talking about OpenSearch on Twitter are Japanese. And we have very poor language support right now for OpenSearch in Japan, which is why I'm here. I'm here to help support some of our Japanese users and to figure out how we can help them contribute that documentation. I am not a Japanese language speaker. I can speak very little, so I want to work with our community, with our users, to help contribute that back to the project so that it can continue to grow in Japan. Another really key point is your partners. This might not apply to every type of project, but for OpenSearch, our partners are a huge force behind our project. They're the people going out and potentially building their livelihood around our project. They have invested time and effort into maintaining OpenSearch. And as a result, our biggest success is when they're successful. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that our partners feel welcome and able to contribute to the community. And I'll say, even as far as, I've actually started asking our partners for stickers, swags, whatever I can give to help to build their brand awareness when I go to events that they can't attend. So your partners are very important because they're the ones who are going to be bringing your project out into the open and adding use cases and all sorts of other things. So it's very important to have a place to highlight your partners. And OpenSearch in particular has a partners page, and we're actually adding another layer where people can understand what our partners exactly do with OpenSearch. Are they doing search? Are they doing blog analytics? What makes them so special? And by making them feel special, we're lifting everyone else in the community up. And I'm going to share a slide that's going to make everyone cringe. A rising tide lifts all boats. You guys have probably heard this 100 times, but honestly, this really set in for me when I started working in open source. And I was like, what do I do? I'm an advocate, but like, OpenSearch is search, it's search tuning, it is observability, it's security analytics. And like, I'm one guy. I can't do all of that. I barely can handle observability. Search is totally new and very different. So this comes back to actually Lenka's talk as well about building up other people to go and be advocates for your project. Working with them to make sure that they have what they need to get going and run with your project. Another key part is working in the open. OpenSearch is actually doing this in a way that I feel like is very strange. We are being as absolutely, taking this as literally as we possibly can. And it is a very painful process. So say for example, we'll start with conversation, right? Everyone's on each other's side. They slap each other internally. And that becomes a problem because you're suddenly having this whole communication channel that your community is missing out on. So we are working to open up the communication channel to the outside world, whether that's Slack, Discord. There needs somewhere for people to be able to talk about your project in real time. And again, this comes back to that enablement. If they can talk about it in real time, other people can answer in real time. You're no longer taking on all the work of the conversation for your project on your own. Another part is planning. Put your plan in the open. I've actually just recently been talking to someone in Japan, and he was mentioning how he and his company had put all of this work into contributing code to an open source project they were using. Just to find out that that project had also been working on that same problem, and that project accepted their own contribution over theirs. That's frustrating. But if you plan in the public, they can go to that roadmap, they can see that issue, And they can know that, oh, you're already working on it, or maybe they put the issue out there first, and then guess what? Your company no longer has to build that code. That's awesome. So planning in the public, and GitHub has some great tools for this. We're using their boards for our public roadmap right now. So anything about OpenSearch, you should be able to go and find our project roadmap. Documentation, again, I mentioned this earlier. Documentation is an important thing to have in the open, so that people can contribute back updates, fixes, all of those things, clarity, and inclusivity, actually. That's been a wonderful thing that's contributed to us from one of our external members. So that should all be in the open, and there are tools for doing this, and it's very painful at times. You know, it would be much simpler for us to just manage have our own CMS and do it all internally, but that limits our community on what they're able to do. So we use Jekyll to build our documentation website. Then there's blogs. We have a Jekyll site for blogs as well. Surprise! Our project website is built in Jekyll. So blogging is a way for users to partners contribute use cases. So putting this out in the open allows everyone to be a participant in your community. It's opening the doors and allowing everyone to come in. I'll also add, one of the things we've been doing as well is build trust with our community, and this is very different. We are the first at AWS to open up our security practice. We are triaging our security issues in GitHub in the public on a weekly basis. This is building so much trust. You know, say for example, you open an issue and maybe you didn't know how to describe what you wanted to say, so you put like a sentence in time. Well, you can attend our security triage meetings, and they might say, oh, there's not enough information here, I'm going to add it to the backlog. They say, wait, no, this is critical, like, let me explain to you what this does and what this means. And that's allowed OpenSearch to be exceptionally secure. So bringing this all out into the open is really, really important for you to properly support your community. With that, one of my last points is you really want to get away from the I in community. There is no me. If there is no community, what I have to say about it means nothing. We are nothing without the people using our projects. So it's really important that you are a participant in your community rather than an owner of your community. So what would happen to your community tomorrow if your company or if you personally stepped away? Could it run? Would it be maintained? Would anyone want to maintain it? I challenge our team with this on a regular basis, and it drives almost all of the decisions that we do at OpenSearch. Because what we do today might not be what happens tomorrow. So it's very important for us to take ourselves out of the equation and figure out how we can enable our community to do these things. In particular, one of the most challenging things, and this is something I've been struggling with for a long time, so if anyone has a solution, please reach out to me. We want our users to have open access, I say open, the ability to contribute to our YouTube channel, our Twitter handle. Why is it owned by a single company or a single user? Those should be open so that everyone has access to that. That's going to be what's best long-term for our partners to be able to share their information. For our users to be able to share their videos, their use cases. That should all live under the OpenSearch YouTube channel, and they should be able to contribute to that. Building these processes, it's difficult. I'm not going to pretend that advocating for open source is easy. There's no shortage of challenges. But if we don't try, and we're not doing the right thing for our community. So we wake up every day trying to do the best thing. We're going to wrap up real quick and just cover everything that we've talked about. So the first thing you need to do is build trust. Be a community that's trustworthy by doing the right things over and over again. Whether that's strictly enforcing your code of conduct or determining that you need to use grace. You need to enable others. Relinquish control. This was mentioned earlier, and Marino mentioned this earlier about EddieHub, actually, in particular. I was just going to say, Eddie giving up control enabled his community to thrive in a way that it couldn't have possibly before. And that's a big scale point. You want to scale your community now. Open up your practices so that your community can live long, long, far beyond you. Nothing is worse than seeing, a community has died off, their YouTube channel is dead, their Twitter channel is dead. And then remove yourself. Think about ways that you can remove yourself from the situation and say, how can I enable others? So if you didn't watch Lenka's earlier, I really strongly suggest going back and watching that, because she talked about enabling people within her company to be advocates. But that could be applied very openly to enable people in other companies to be advocates for your product as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of the books that I felt like really helped me get here and understand this. So the first is Developer Marketing Doesn't Exist, which talks about how to do DevRel and how to sell but not sell, because you don't want to be selling your open source. I feel like I should have done that probably a lot more, so I'm glad I only just did that now. Open source projects. If you're selling your project, is it really doing what it needs to do? And then the other one with very small text is actually working in public, the making and maintenance of open source software. This was phenomenal, helping me understand how open source communities work and all the different ways in which people have and continue to contribute to open source. And next on my list, but I didn't add it, is Developer Relations, How to Build and Grow a Successful Developer Program. So of course, I already actually had that on my list, so I'm happy that Caroline is here so that I can talk to her, but that is coming up for me. And a huge shout out to OpenSearch for allowing me to come here and talk to you guys about advocating in open source. Also, this is a trackable link, so thank you for scanning it so that my boss can know I did a great job coming here and telling you why you should do similar things. So thank you all, and I'm happy to take any questions now if we have time for that.